You know what time it is. It's 7 o'clock. Well, actually, it's 8 minutes past 7. And it's time for Strong and Sassy. Good evening and welcome. This is Joy 99.7 FM, and this is your favorite program. My name is Animwaa Anim-Addo, and we'll be doing this until 8. So I hope you stay glued to your seats and you don't miss a minute. So tonight, we're talking about anxiety, and it's quite normal to hear people talk about depression. That's something that in recent times we've talked about a lot, and people have come out, and said that they're suffering from depression, and we're kind of taking the stigma away from it and, the mystery surrounding it. But depression has a sister or a brother, if you would, and that's anxiety. And I was speaking to a couple of friends this week, and I realized that a lot of people feel like anxiety is something that happens when you have something big coming up and you just have, those little butterflies in your stomach and you're a little bit anxious, because you have something big coming up. But anxiety is so much more than that. And tonight we want to talk about that. We want to talk about whether anxiety is in our heads or is in our hearts, if it's an emotional thing, if it's a mental thing. And for those of you who are listening to us who are dealing with anxiety, we want you to know that you're not alone. That's the first thing. But we also want to equip you with tools so that you can have a full life in the midst of all the anxiety that you feel about so many different things. So that's what we're doing tonight. And I have a very special guest. Actually, I have two very special guests. The first is Olivia. She's a wellness coach. I'm sure you know her as Ariel the coach on social media. She's joining us in the studio to kind of help us navigate this conversation. And we also have Nadia Eke. She's an athlete. She does long jump for Ghana. She's been to the Olympics. Very, very fancy. And she'll be talking to us as well about how she copes with anxiety when she has, big things coming up. So we're going to kind of take it from all the sides of anxiety. So good evening and welcome to Strong and Sassy.
Thank you. Good evening.
Okay.
Pleasure meeting you.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to have you. Thank you, Nadia, as well. Nadia is on Zoom, and so she'll be joining us that way. So, Olivia, let me start with you. In the first place, could you tell us how different anxiety is from depression?
Okay. The difference between anxiety and depression, it means anxiety has become a medical condition, and so you are depressed. So anxiety starts before depression comes. So anxiety goes on for a very long time before depression comes. And depression means you have reached the state that you're doing nothing about it. You're living the condition of always unhappy with your state of being. And so you're always having that worry, fear, unhappiness always going on around you. Whereas anxiety can start with something minor coming up that causes intense or excessive fear or worry. Okay. But the more it continues for a long time and it's not being taken care of, then you're losing, your well-being, and then depression also starts coming. So depression is when it has become a mental health situation and you may need a medical assistance. Okay,
so for anxiety, but the thing is, if you're talking medically, you find that there are antidepressants.
Yeah.
And then there are anti-anxiety meds.
Yes.
So there's definitely some sort of difference between the two.
Yes.
Okay, so could you clarify that for me?
But before you get to depression, you definitely have to have gone through some anxiety. So you just don't jump straight to depression. You go through worry, fear about something, and then you move to that place of sadness, and then you move to that place of maybe isolation. Then you continue to get to the place of depression.
Right.
So they can be treated differently. That's the thing. When anxiety comes and you notice I'm anxious, you have a lot of tools and resources to use to treat it. So it doesn't graduate to a more serious situation. But when you get to depression, then it means you need more assistance, you need more help that a normal maybe exercise may not be able to help you to come out of it, and you may need medical assistance or something. But most of the time, anxiety, a normal generalized anxiety will not lead to you going to the hospital.
Yes, most of the people I know who have anxiety have said that there are moments when they have it and there are moments when they don't.
They don't, yes.
So it would seem like there are triggers for it, and then there are actually times that they're fine, as opposed to depression, which then becomes, and I think one of the definitions for depression is that it has to have continued for more than 21 days.
It goes on for a long time.
So it's that constant feeling, whilst anxiety is something which also comes and goes, and is triggered by many different things. Yeah. So why do you think that in Ghana, for example, there's so much not talking about these issues, about things like anxiety? I mean, I don't want to mix it with depression, because I really want to focus on that. But why do you think that we don't talk about it enough?
We use the word stress more. So people say I'm stressed, but actually they are anxious, and that is what is causing the stress.
Okay.
Yeah, so people say I'm stressed out, but what is causing the stress is an anxiety about something, excessive or intense fear or worry about a situation that they feel is bigger than them, or they want to resolve in the now and all that. Then they use the word I'm stressed.
Right.
So it's just the words we use around it. But I think people use the word I'm stressed more than I'm anxious.
Okay.
Or I'm feeling anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but when you say you are stressed, sometimes when you are describing an emotion and you don't describe it well, you are unable to treat it well. So identifying what you are feeling and asking yourself, why am I feeling like this, is very important to know. Am I feeling anxious because I have so much work to do, or why? So it's important to know why you are feeling anxious or why you are feeling stressed in the first place. Then you can treat, whatever it is, with whatever tool you can get available. Okay,
so I have anxiety, for example, and if I'm describing it to you, I would say it starts off as butterflies in your stomach, and then the butterflies get more active, and then there's a frenzy, and then they kind of take over your mind, and it becomes difficult to think logically or clearly about whatever it is that is causing you the anxiety in that moment. And then you also find that overthinking is one of the things that anxiety goes with. You take one thing and you explore the 555,000 negative scenarios, and then it becomes a vicious cycle, And I'm saying this because I really want the difference between anxiety and depression to be very clear.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's how I would describe it. Yeah. But in the process of dealing with the anxiety that I have, and my friends who have anxiety and stuff, we find that a lot of the anxiety that people have is rooted in some sort of childhood trauma or some sort of experience. So you find that if you speak to people who have anxiety and they're self-aware, they'll be able to tell you that, okay, I feel anxious about this situation because of something I've been through or because of something that has happened.
Yeah.
But for those who don't know, how do you identify the source of your anxiety? Not just the symptoms of your anxiety, but the source of your anxiety.
Coming from. So we have different types of anxiety, and so the first thing to understand is, which anxiety am I dealing with? Is it a social anxiety? Is it a phobia? Is it a generalized anxiety? Is it a relationship anxiety? So once you can identify where it's coming from, then you can try to go back and find out, why do I always feel like this when I go among people?
Yeah.
So if you have a social anxiety, it means anytime you go among people, you always have some panic attack, or you feel like uncomfortable. I don't like where I am. I want to leave this place, or that kind of thing. You just feel unease around a lot of people. So ask yourself, why do I feel like that? And it's true you mentioned it, because I used to have the same thing. I don't like to go to a lot of, places that there are a lot of people. And my father used to say that when we were growing up, my father would say that if you go to a place that there are a lot of people, in case of something, you will fall and they will stamp on you. And so that went into my mind.
Right.
And so when I have to go to a place that is crowded, I always feel like I don't like
something will happen to you. I'll
fall and there'll be a stampede and something will happen.
Yeah.
So, but the self-awareness comes in being a conscious person, being aware of your own thoughts, And then you'll be able to grasp where your fear or your worry or the causes of your anxiety is coming from. Because outside the generalized ones, the phobia and the panic attack and the social ones, it always, back there somewhere, something you picked from childhood, and it's in the subconscious mind. And so anytime you find yourself in such places, then you trigger it, and then you feel the panic attack or the anxiety coming on. But when you are in awareness, self-awareness, and you're a very conscious person, you can actually be able to identify.
Olivia, you realize that self-awareness and consciousness is a whole different show, right?
Different show.
Because you find that a lot of people don't place as much value on consciousness or on self-awareness. And so, I find that there are times when people that I know or my friends will do something and I'll ask them why, and they cannot actually explain. So I'd always say, but if this behavior has been with you all your life, how have you not questioned yourself that, why am I the way that I am? Because the way that I am affects other people. Yeah. So consciousness and self-awareness is definitely another conversation, but it's also at the heart of anxiety if we're talking about, because you really cannot deal with the source if you have not asked
awareness.
Exactly. If you haven't asked a question. Well, you can join the conversation. Our WhatsApp line is a little bit different from the normal one. It's 055 111 1997. So 055 111 1997. If you have anxiety issues, send me a hi. Let me know that you're there and you're listening, and send your questions in as well for Olivia. And Nadia will be sharing her experiences as well. And maybe a little later on we'll open the phone lines. But if you just tuned in, this is Strong and Sassy, and tonight we're talking about anxiety and what that means. So let me bring in Nadia. Hello, Nadia.
Hi.
Hi. It's so good to have you with us. So, for example, you are an athlete. And so, you train and you get ready for, all these games and stuff. And then you get to the stadium and there's like 5,000 people watching you. How does that feel in terms of being anxious or being a little bit apprehensive?
So the funny thing about it is, in this conversation, right, when you guys were asking why anxiety is not addressed in Ghana, for the most part, I think the biggest thing is we're a culture that's very results oriented. So everything that everyone's doing, the question is always like, well, why didn't you win a gold medal? Or if you're going to school, it's not about what you studied, it's about your degree, it's about this, it's about that. And so I think just in Ghana, for the most part, I think a lot of people have anxiety, right? And it's not chronic, but they have anxiety and they don't know. And so it's not even addressed because it's just almost like we operate in that dysfunctional mode. So I just wanted to add that. But on top of that, for me, actually in sports, that's the easier part of my job. And so beyond the athlete, I do all these other things. And I think for me, anxiety actually comes more prevalent in my personal life and not in my athletic life. So being on stage, being in a stadium full of 100,000 people, or whatever you may have it's easier for me because I've trained for that. I've trained for it. This is the moment I'm here for, and I can control what my body does. Whereas in my career, in my life, I cannot control everything around it. So I think in terms of anxiety, there's also a piece of control that needs to be addressed, where the fear of not being able to control the situation. But as far as competition goes, I think for me, the more prepared I am, the easier it is. And I actually thrive on that feeling of being a little bit anxious when I'm competing, because I don't have room to overthink about what I'm doing. I just respond, and it almost acts as instinct for me when I'm competing. But in my personal life, that's a different story.
Okay, so let's talk about your personal life then, because it seems like with sports, it kind of spurs you on. But how does it affect you in your personal life?
Yeah, and so for example, like I was saying, going back to my point about being very results oriented, I think in sports, once again, I'm results oriented in that space, and it works. It makes you successful that way. But then when it gets to like my job or things that I'm working on, or even relationships, right? It's I'm so focused on the result and the end goal that sometimes I miss the pieces in between. And so that's where the anxiety comes in, where it's like I'm working on a project or something like that. And rather than thinking about the steps from how I get from point A to point B, I'm thinking about point B and what the implications of when I get to point B are, and the things that I need to think about when I'm at point B. And so that's where I overthink the whole process rather than being present in the moment and actually experiencing what's happening. I think I get too far ahead and focus on the end goal so much that it overwhelms me.
Yeah, wow. So one of you has texted, it was Kwame from Dansuman, and he says, I noticed recently that when I get really anxious, my stomach hurts. Well, I get like that too. And I have to visit the gents. Do I need to see the doctor? I'm Kwame from Dansuman. So Kwame, let me let Olivia answer that.
What Kwame is facing is it's different for everybody. Some people get anxiety and they sweat and their heart beats faster. Some people their stomach just go running like that. And
some people throw up.
And some people feel nauseous and throw up. So it depends on how frequent this is happening to you. If it's happening very frequent, then you are going into an anxiety disorder and you may need to see a doctor. Yeah.
Okay. This one says, this is Odate from Kokomlemle, and he says, I don't have a question but a suggestion. I think one way of combating anxiety is to find something to do that takes one's mind from that worry once the anxiety crops up. Just take the mind away from it. And I would say to this, Olivia, the thing is, when you have, let's call it an anxiety attack or whatever it is, you know that if you do something to take your mind off it, it will go. But the thing is, it kind of takes, it sounds like it has a life of its own. So it takes over you. Okay. So you know that you should do something to take your mind off it, but your mind is like, no, I want to.
Yeah, it's because of the way we've trained our mind. Our mind is supposed to be a tool we use, but we've allowed our mind to use us because we are unconscious. And so when the mind says this, we go there. But you are supposed to be in awareness to choose what you are focusing your mind on. And
please, we haven't reached there. I mean,
it's a lot of work. And what's her name?
Nadia.
Nadia said something that when she's at point A wanting to be at point B, this is the whole thing with anxiety. Refusing to be here now. Refusing to accept that this is what I have to do and I have to start from here to get to point B. And so it's an acceptance of the now. Right now, I have all these things in front of me to do. And you think, oh, it's so much for me to do. I wish I had finished and I'm at point B when I finish. And so you start worrying about what you have to do. But you have to start anyway. And so we rather forget about the now to be calm and start whatever we think is the biggest problem. Because anxiety can come in just having 6-8 emails to send. If you just overthink it, and what time will I send? You can get anxious, and that will even affect your creativity to write a proper email. Because instead of keeping calm to write the first one well, so you send it and do the next one, anxiety disrupts the way you are thinking, and it takes over your mind. So simply, we have to prepare. Good preparation, and as she said, she prepares herself. You have to prepare for what is ahead of you.
But I feel like, and Nadia, let me come to you on that. I feel like there are some things that you can't prepare for. So
I think the thing that I've learned, and it's funny because as Olivia was saying, it made me even think about this, is I didn't realize that how bad my anxiety was until actually maybe a couple of years ago. Right? Because I just kind of functioned in that way.
I mean, there is high-functioning anxiety.
And it was dysfunctional. It was functionally dysfunctional. But the thing was, for me, it was just like, because I went to Columbia University, so I was an Ivy League student, and I was an athlete competing in the NCAA at the highest level. And so to me, it seemed normal to feel that way, like, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed. This is just normal to feel that way. But then fast forward to where I am now and being able to identify that feeling, I've gotten to the space where once that feeling comes, I ask myself, what can I do to control it? If I can control it, fine, let me do what I can. If I cannot control it, I cannot think about it. And I have this mantra where I say, I'll worry about it when I have to worry about it. And it's difficult, but like you're saying, the things that you cannot prepare for, like, if you cannot prepare for it, you cannot prepare for it. So I will worry about it when I have to worry about it. And I tell myself this on the daily, like I'll worry about it when I have to worry about it. Or sometimes if there's something that's making me anxious and thinking about it, let's say I'm worried about what if this project doesn't end up the way I want it. I'll give myself a timeline. I'll say, okay, I'll give myself until Monday next week. If by Monday next week things are not looking up, I'll give myself the opportunity to freak out. But just based on how I work, I know that by Monday I won't have the opportunity to freak out because I figured something out. Okay. So I allow myself the room to say, okay, this is how you're feeling. It's valid. If you feel this way by this day, you can continue to freak out, but at least try something before you freak out.
Okay, I like that, you're able to tell yourself, let me worry about this when I need to worry about it. Because when I tell myself that, then I hear myself say, yeah, so why don't we just worry about it now? If we're going to worry about it eventually, we might as well worry about it now.
Okay, another side of this whole anxiety thing is, as she said, we function it and so we accept it. But we need to come to an understanding that everything that is affecting us is affecting our total well-being. Mm-hmm. And if you think, okay, I'm functioning like this and it's okay, I'm just functioning like that, and you don't create a lifestyle that supports you well so you can deal with the negative effects of anxiety, because fine, things will come up to cause you to, sway off a bit. You can't have everything normal, and as you say, we can't always prepare ahead. But we can prepare ourselves in a way that when anxiety comes, we have the tools and resources to deal with it. Okay. And these tools and resources are in your self-care practices. She said something. She said she has a mantra. So what affirmations you use for yourself when you find yourself anxious? So you need to have things that when I feel like this is what I do. And that is a self-care plan. So if you know that you are somebody who deal with a lot of anxiety, you need to have your self-care plan. And there are emergency self-care plans that you can prepare. I can give you one.
Yeah, sure.
And have it in your purse. So anytime you find yourself anxious, you can just take it out and you have a plan that when I feel like this, I call this person. Okay. I do this, I do that. So you have a preparation for your self-care practice for anxiety. And that is some of the things, because truly, you wouldn't know when something will come and cause you to have that intense feeling, especially when it has to do with work and you don't know what is coming with the day. Today I got up and I was having my own thing, and then everything just started going its own thing. Yeah. So you need to know, what sort of person am I? Do I feel anxious when these things come to me? How do I take care of myself, mind, body, and spirit, so that when these things come, I'll be able to be at my best self to handle it? But normally, we don't have any plan. We are not consciously planning to take care of certain areas of our life. So we leave ourselves. Even simple exercise helps with anxiety. So if every day you can even have a 15-minute morning exercise, you'll be in a better place to take on the day's pressure that will come.
Okay, I see what you mean, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
You'll be more responding in a more positive way to take on the day's pressures that will come if you do something for your body and your mind and your spirit to prepare you daily. Yeah. So your morning practices, what do you do in the morning? Do you just get up and then you go on social media, reading, nothing, no preparation, no exercise? What nurturing do you do for your body? And all that is a way of preparing yourself for what is coming ahead of you. And that is where we miss it. Yeah. So we just leave ourselves bare.
And open.
Yeah. And that comes from unconsciousness. The word you don't want to hear.
I think, Olivia, you made a very, very good point about having someone that you go to. For me, my sister is the person that I go to when I have my moments. And I think it's important to have someone who's not judgmental. Yeah. And so my sister, I will talk about the thing about my anxiety. I'm very obsessive. So I want to have control of the situation so bad that I will talk about it over and over and over and over again. And my sister is the type of person that she'll just be receptive to everything I'm saying. And even if it's the 10th time we're talking about it, she'll be the same, she'll be as receptive and will not judge me in a way to make me feel like I'm crazy. So I think for me, that helps me calm down as well, because I start to realize, it's not that big of a deal. Yeah. And she'll ask me, okay, scenario, what's this, what's that, and she knows I'm very logic based too, so she'll ask me questions to get me to that point where my logic can set in.
That sounds like a really good sister. So good evening to our sister who helps.
There are a lot of exercises, tools, resources we need at our fingertips to deal with. I mean,
once you've identified that, you know, you have some anxiety about some issues. Nadia, let me ask you this. Do you find that the anxiety that you have affects your very close personal relationships?
No, because I wouldn't say I have chronic anxiety. I think I have anxiety about certain things.
Okay.
And I think I have been able to surround myself with people who understand the type of person I am and understand what my triggers are and where that comes from. And so I would say just all around, I have a group of very supportive people. But even prior to that, I'm very, very, very selective about the people that I let in my circle, just because of protecting my own peace. You know what I mean? So I think I haven't really had too many issues in my personal life with my anxiety about stuff getting in the way of relationships.
Yeah.
But I can see how it can be problematic.
Yeah, no, but I mean, what you're saying is, like, it's amazing because, and I'm saying it's amazing because you said that you've surrounded yourself with people who understand the type of person that you are and who understand your triggers. And I think that in Ghana, let me, bring it home, a lot of people don't take these kinds of things seriously.
Yeah.
So when you tell somebody that, hey, I have anxiety about this or I have anxiety about that, I mean, they're not even interested enough to ask you, where is it coming from? What are your triggers? How do I support you? How do I communicate, with you so that you don't, have these things? But I find that when you are surrounded by people who understand you on that level, I'm trying to remember, there was a word for it, something dependency, but it actually, it's something, no, I also thought codependency, but it's not, but it actually, almost heals you quicker when you have people who understand you and are able to support you. Yeah. But Olivia, so what does, I want to talk about relationships for a second and then I'll move on. Sure. But what kind of impact does anxiety have
on
relationships? So, the husband-wife relationship or the parents, just general, not specific to,
When you're going through a lot of anxiety, you're already always irritated. So irritability is one of the symptoms of anxiety. And so that will crop up in your relationship, whereas a simple communication, you can blow it up because you are irritated about everything. And so if your spouse is not aware, or your parents or your kids are not aware that mommy is just stressed out or anxious today, that's why she's reacting like that, then you are affecting the relationship you have with them. And so when you are anxious, you have to know, so you can do something. Because when you are irritated, you put it on the people around you. And the people around you will take it as you put it on them if they are not aware, and they will think, okay, she's not nice, she was rude to me, she was shouting at me, or she didn't respect me.
What about when they are the cause of the anxiety in the first place?
Okay, that's a good question. If somebody is the cause of your anxiety, what boundaries can you create? So boundaries in relationship is very, very important. We all have our limits, and so you have to create healthy boundaries. And boundaries actually puts the responsibility on the one creating the boundary. So if your boundary is I don't take expensive joke, then you don't start an expensive joke on people either. Okay. But if you create a boundary, you think, okay, don't play expensive jokes with me, but you play it with people, then you don't have a boundary. Because I will assume that if you can play expensive joke on me, then I can play expensive joke on you. So maybe you don't like anybody to take your cup or lie on your bed the other way you lie, and these things get you irritated or cause anxiety. If you don't create boundaries around the things you like or you want people to treat in a certain way by communicating effectively, then they will do it and it will cause you the anxiety. So healthy boundaries is very important. And healthy boundaries need healthy communication. Let your spouse know, please, when I come home, can I have some 30 minutes for myself? So maybe your man would like to have 30 minutes to himself when he comes home.
I can hear the men just shouting right now because that's just the
but as soon
general.
as he gets home, then you go, Kwesi, return school fees. And
no, you meet them at the meet them at the door with the baby
so
because you're tired.
If he wants to have some time for himself, he needs to communicate that effectively in a very nice way that, when I come, I want to just lie down for some 30 minutes.
And I think that, let me just chip this in, Olivia, with healthy communication is much more effective when it's done under not stressful conditions.
Yes.
So it's not at that moment, that then you're trying to communicate. It helps if, beforehand you say, babe, when I come, we're watching a movie in a good space, babe, when I come home, can I have just 30 minutes to wine? It's more receptive. So healthy communication is also very timely conversation. Yeah. It's like how my dad used to say he was getting married and he was like, I don't want to have a wife who, when I say my waist is paining me, then she should say her knee is paining her, and it just, it's I'm using it as a symbol of how we communicate these things. It's important that for example, somebody comes to you with their anxiety or they're setting a boundary, that you give them the space to do that. And don't make it about you.
Exactly.
And then when you want to talk about something, then you bring that up and then you have that conversation.
Yeah. It needs for us to understand that these things are real. As you're sharing, sometimes you tell people and they don't really appreciate it. For me, I don't like being late. So if I'm going somewhere with you and you delay my time, I get anxious. So what I need is some time to bring myself together when we finally move or something. So I may act up a little, but just give me some few minutes to adjust myself. Okay, we finally move. Okay, we're on the way going. Okay.
Yeah, but we are late. And you made me late. So get out of my car. In fact, I won't even wait for you.
Really? So for me, as soon as I find myself being late, I get anxious. So I'm always 30 minutes, an hour ahead of my schedule.
Okay.
Always. So because when I'm late, I get anxious. If I'm going somewhere I don't know the place, I know I'll get anxious driving myself. I'll pick Uber.
Okay.
Because I don't know, and I don't know the road, and I don't know what's going to happen. So I'm always proactive.
Yes, it seems like.
And preventive, because I know myself. So it's important for us to get engaged with ourselves and understand the things that causes us anxiety.
Nadia, let me come to you. Have you found the sources of your anxiety?
I think I mentioned it earlier. Mine is control. I need to be in control. I mean
the source. So like what at which points did that develop, or what made you need to have control?
To be honest, I don't even recall, but I feel I've always been like that even as a child. I remember. Like my mom always says this story about how one time I had cultural drama and dancing, this was in nursery school. And I woke up at 5 a.m. I wanted, the whole house needed to know what their role was. We need to leave at this time. We need to do this. My clothes need to be like this. I need my hair like this. It's just, I've always been like, I don't know the source of it.
Okay.
I don't know the source of it, but I know that it's because I always want to be in control of the situation. Yeah. And that's why I was saying that for me, with sports, it works because I'm in control. I'm in control about how much time I put into it. I'm in control about what I'm doing on the day. That being said, when injury happens, you're not in control. So it's a very weird relationship.
Dynamic,
and I'm still trying to learn how to let go of that control and trust more. So I don't know whether it's the control comes first or the trust issues comes first. I don't know which one.
Oh gosh, trust issues is another topic. Out of the anxiety conversation, we have 3 conversations that we have to have. We have to have the consciousness conversation. Well, 2, which is the awareness conversation, and now we have the trust issues conversation.
Yes, trust issues.
Because trust issues is big.
Yeah.
Trust issues is big.
And when you trust, it reduces your anxiety because you can relax and know that it might not look well right now, but it's going to work out.
Yeah.
Somehow things will work out.
Yeah.
So that comes from trust.
I think most people don't have a problem maybe trusting God. I trust God, it's people that I don't trust. I mean, because people are not, You know, people
where is your faith? Is your faith in people or God?
My faith is in people, but
control people for you.
But you see, the argument is that he can't always control me. So how can he control other people when he can? But anyway, that's a whole different
powerful thing you've just said. He can't control you.
He cannot, yeah.
So that is
because he gives us our free will.
It's always about how we are dealing with ourselves.
Yeah, that we project on other people. Yeah.
So you haven't allowed him to control you.
So projection is also another topic.
Projection is another topic.
Projection is another. But let's not wade into the trust issues topic because I think that will take us away from this. And we can always come back to dealing with trust issues. So Abu, if you can please make a note of that for me. And I think I want to talk about coping mechanisms.
Sure.
In that moment when, and I'm using this, very restrainedly. I'm not sure if that's a word, but the voices of anxiety or the negative is very, they can get very, very loud. Mm-hmm. Very, very, very loud. And you can come out of a moment of anxiety and look back and be like, how did I manage to convince myself in that moment that what I was thinking was right?
Yeah.
Mm. How do you deal with
the inner critic?
Yes, that child who's been hurt, that child who's afraid, or that woman who has been betrayed, it's so many different issues, dynamics. But how do you deal with it?
Okay, that is a big subject, but dealing with that starts with how you are healing those wounds through how you care for yourself. Mm. Now, we all have wounds, and those inner wounds is only taken care of by the things we do for ourselves. But what we do is
Jesus.
Well, Jesus. But what we do is we open up thinking that the healing will come from somewhere else, and so we're always looking at who will do the right thing for us to feel okay.
Yeah.
But the responsibility lies with you first, to listen to your inner critic and find out what is it saying and why is it saying this to me. What can I do about what it's saying to me? Now, the subject of wellness is holistic, that everything that is affecting your body is affecting your mind, and as it affects your mind, it's affecting your spirit, and vice versa. And they are all intertwined. Mm-hmm. And so you can't just be there and only focus on the dresses and the shoes and the bags and the food and all that. Your mind is a tool to be taken care of, deliberate, intentional, on purpose. Things you have to do for your mind. That is what will reduce the inner critic from always taking over your mind. Now, what are the things you can do to take care of your mind? Your meditation, your affirmation, your reading, your self-care, maybe a movie you watch, maybe exercise. These little things, connecting with nature, going to the beach, giving yourself time to sit and just feel your breathing. Now, breathing is a very important tool. That's why we are here. If we are not breathing, you are not here. But we don't think about it. Being conscious of your breathing or bringing your awareness onto your breathing can get you out of the mind so you can feel calm. You can just sit down and have a 5 minutes breathing exercise. That can reduce your anxiety a whole great deal because you take your mind off thought and just focus on how your heart is moving up and down and breathing. And that is an exercise you can take on anytime you feel anxiety coming. Just go to the washroom, close your eyes, put your hands on your chest, one on your stomach, and then just feel your breathing. And you will snap out of thoughts and focus on your breathing. And within a minute or two, you start feeling different. You start feeling calm.
Okay.
And so you have to do things that always gives you a positive energy because anxiety comes from a negative energy.
Yeah, it does.
So if you don't have things you do for your mind, body, and spirit that are positive, so that the inner critic will be silent with your positive self-talk, then it's always controlling you.
Positive self-talk.
That's
another topic.
Is a very important, it's important thing, and we sometimes don't know that we are the same person telling ourselves all the things. But we are not in awareness, another subject.
Yeah.
So, can I add one more thing to the coping?
Yeah, sure, you can. Go ahead.
For me as well. So I'm very, like I said, I'm very results oriented. I'm very logic based. And so when I have those moments where I'm doubting myself or thinking like, what's going to happen, the worst case scenario, there are two things that I've learned and put into practice that have really, really been helpful. The first is I look back and I say, okay, based on what you know about yourself, based on how far you've come, based on all the things you've accomplished, what tells you that this will not happen, or what tells you that this won't be as successful as the other things that you've done? And then I start to look at the facts, right? And a lot of the times there's nothing to back my claim, so that eases a little bit. And then another part that I do is when I do identify, okay, these are the reasons why I think I may not succeed at this, then I outline, okay, what is the worst case scenario that can actually happen from this situation, right? So I address the worst case scenario and confront it and say, okay, if this is the worst case scenario, how would I respond if this happened?
Yeah.
And then once I create that plan, and it's like, okay, well, the worst case scenario is that the worst case scenario, as long as I'm not dead, I'm fine.
But even if you die and you know that you're going to heaven, then being dead is not such a bad thing.
But if the worst case scenario is like, something that I think that I can find a solution for.
Okay.
And I come up with a solution for, if this actually does happen, this is what I'll do. Then it helps put things into reality a little bit, because I think with anxiety, things kind of get blown out of reality, and kind of ride off to the sunset on their own. Yeah, so those are some of the coping mechanisms that have been helpful for me.
Okay. So a very good evening to Auntie Angie, who is listening. Thank you so much, and thank you for all the pointers. And she's pointing out that the thing with anxiety, or the thing with mental health issues, is that it's so diverse. There are so many different aspects, So there's OCD, there's Asperger's, there's depression, there's anxiety, there's all the childhood traumas, and it's so intricate. And just as human beings, we're such a complex web of emotions and experiences. So, we may not be able to tackle each of them as deeply as we want to. But I think that if we're just going to be general today, and then maybe as time goes by, we can begin to take on some of these issues one by one, then we can really tackle them. When I have anxiety and I'm scared, because my anxiety is most of the time is fear. Okay. I'm afraid of something. I just listen to worship music, and it kind of just takes me. So that's my coping mechanism. Or I act out, which is not a coping mechanism, and then you act out, and then you kind of look back and you're like,
I didn't do well.
I really shouldn't.
So you expressed it in the wrong way.
Exactly. You really just, act out, and you're irrational, and you're hurting, and you're in pain, and you don't know whether you're in pain from what could have happened, what didn't happen, what happened 20 years ago, what could happen in 25 years. Yeah. It's all just like a mix, and it's crazy. So like Olivia said, breathe. If you're listening to us, when you start feeling anxious about something, just breathe. Just breathe through it. Hand on your heart, hand on your stomach. Deep breaths. Move from thought to focusing on your breathing, and you'll find that you should be able to get through it. Another thing that I do is I remember this scripture: "Do not be anxious for anything, but in every So I just tell myself, do not be anxious about anything, and then whatever it is that I'm anxious about, I'm like, okay, God, I know that you can watch over this, or you can do this, or you can do that, and it also kind of centers me.
Gratitude is true. It's one of the tools to use for your self-care practices that can reduce your anxiety and your inner critic, because look for the good and the bad right now. What can I focus on and be grateful?
Be grateful for.
That in spite of all that is going on, I can just say that, okay, it's not that bad. There's something good in it. Then you take your eyes off all the bad and focus on the good and say, I'm grateful for this.
Yeah.
Then you start transmuting it. And
my friend
some of these things are even spiritual practices.
Yes, they are. Definitely. My friend had her coping mechanism was to ask, and what? Okay. So she'd be like, okay, I'm scared of this, and what? Mm-hmm. Okay, then I do this, and what? Mm-hmm. And then this person does this, and what? Yeah. And then this person, and then what you're afraid of happens, and what? Yeah. And you would find that by the time she's gone through all the and what, she's kind of found her strength again, because she's like, look, I've been through this, I've been through that, I've survived this, I've survived that. Yeah. So really, there's nothing to be scared of. But, we all cope in different ways, right?
In different ways, yes. I mean, the style you use may not be the same style for somebody else. That's why it's important to know yourself. To know yourself is to be engaged with yourself, know the things you like, the things you don't like, and how you are able to deal with yourself. But most of the time, we are not even engaged with ourselves. And so we're just going on responding and reacting in distraction. And that also makes anxiety more serious.
Yeah, responding and reacting. A lot of us live responding and reacting, reactive lives.
Yep.
So we're not controlling the things.
We are not controlling. We are not deliberate. We are not intentional.
Right.
So everything happens and we react in the same way as it comes. But when you are conscious, the word you don't want to hear, you always will step back and say, which way will I go? Is this taking me to high-level wellness or is taking me to illness? Whichever choice you make takes you one way or the other.
But that's the thing. If at that point you can remember that it's called high-level wellness.
Yes.
Nadia, do you think at the point of your anxiety you can remember
ease and which one gives me disease? I mean, that's another way.
Which one gives me ease?
Which one gives me ease? Is it letting go of it and forgiving it and just relaxing now gives me ease, or to react and respond and say my peace of mind and also scream? Is that what I want?
Right.
So whichever choice you make takes you one way or the other.
Right.
So it's important to step back and say, hey, which way do I want to go?
Okay. So Nadia, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. So what does the future look like for you in terms of your anxiety? What are your plans to deal with it?
I think the thing about it is I think you're talking to a Nadia who's on the other side, right? And so I'm speaking retrospectively about a lot of these things, but I think I've found ways to cope with some of the things that, I deal with. But I think another part of it is understanding that I don't have to be happy every single second and every single moment of the day.
Okay.
I think that's also another piece that contributes to it, is this thought that everything should always be happy. Sometimes you just feel normal. You know what I mean? And I think realizing that and accepting that is the next step for me, where I don't always have to be happy. I don't always have to be super productive. I can have days where I'm just not up to par, but it shouldn't mean that, this is who I am because I'm not happy today or because I didn't get as much done today. So I think the next step is really trying to accept that as my reality.
Okay. That's a good reality.
My coping tool is acceptance.
Yeah.
Acceptance, yeah.
I'm at peace with everything that comes. I accept it as it is, as if I deliberately chose it. And I know it will turn around. For somehow I'll go through it and it will come to an end. So acceptance of what is how I use my mechanism for taking care of anxiety. Because if I don't accept it, then it's resistance.
And you're fighting it, and there's much more energy to fight.
There's more energy to use to fight it. So I accept it. It is this, okay, I accept it. And when you accept, you are in control.
Yeah.
Than when you resist.
Because you're fighting it because you're not in control. But when you accept.
And when you accept, you are able to even find a more easier way to go around it than when you are fighting the big thing to move.
Yeah, that's true.
Can I add one more thing? I think another thing too is I've also, for me, I'm a strong believer in purpose. And I know I'm here for a purpose. And so I also constantly try to remind myself that, what's within my purpose and what's for me will not elude me. And so, yes, I'm trying my best to do this thing, but if this is part of my purpose, it will work out.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I've also added onto my mantra. Actually, this was more recent that I started internalizing that one. Yeah. But it's really about looking at it as if it's my purpose, it's for me. If it's not, oh well.
Yeah.
That's a lot of faith.
Yes,
that's a lot of faith.
It's still in the works. It's still in the works. I'm not there yet.
No, but it's good to, be able to speak to yourself. And just before we go, Olivia, you mentioned the things we tell ourselves. I was reading about the fact that we talk to ourselves more than anybody else talks to us. And this article that I was reading, this guy had done some research, and he found that with the people that he was working with, about 70% of the time, they were telling themselves negative things about themselves and about the people around them. Because they found that it's easier to speak negatively to yourself so that you brace yourself for anything that could happen or any kind of pain. But then what happens is that it then manifests in anxiety.
Yes, because your energy is negative already, and so you see the same thing. It's easier to get negative because it comes easier.
Yeah.
Being positive needs work. And the work is you have to be deliberate about it. That I'm choosing to be positive, though I see negative. So it's not easy to see something bad and say I'm going to look at good within it. And so that is where the difference is. It's easy to just think negative and go on and on and go on and on. But choosing positive takes more work, more mind work, being deliberate, being intentional that I'm choosing to go this way.
Yeah.
And so because if you lack self-responsibility, you won't hold yourself responsible to choose.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of work to be positive, and it's easier to just remain negative.
We have to have that consciousness show. I think it's at the heart of everything that we've talked about today. If you've been listening to us today, we've been talking about anxiety, and I think more than anything else, remember to be kind to yourself and tell yourself good things. Yes, self-compassion, and tell yourself good things.
I have a program coming up that will be very good for people having anxiety, and it's the Blueprint Self-Care Masterclass, how to take care of yourself, mind, body, and spirit under the wellness concept. And it is amazing. I've been doing this masterclass for the past 5 years, and since COVID, I've been doing it online, and a lot of people have been taking it. So if you're interested in learning how to take care of yourself holistically, not just living anyhow, but being deliberate about your life, then please do give me a call, and I'll give you the details of the masterclass, and you will transform your life.
What's your social media handles?
It's Ariel, the Wellness Coach.
Okay, so it's Ariel, the Wellness Coach. You look her up on Facebook or Instagram.
Give the number. The
number
go
is
ahead. 0243 600 899. 0243 600 899. Yes.
Or if you forget that, Ariel the Wellness Coach. Thank you so much, Olivia and Nadia, for joining us. It's been a great conversation. This has been Strong and Sassy. My name is Animwaa Anim-Addo, and we'll do this again next week, Wednesday, 7 p.m. Coming up next is Gifty Ando Apia, the beautiful Gifty, who looks as fresh as like it's early in the morning with the 8 o'clock news. Don't go anywhere.